Sometimes we get to a point where we really want barbecue. We don't really necessarily want to go out and buy it because it's expensive, and we also don't want to spend so much time cooking it. Barbecue isn't always easy. Sometimes we have to fire up the entire smoker. Sometimes we have to use a lot of wood, and sometimes it takes a lot of prep. So there's a lot of elements that go into cooking barbecue that sometimes keep us from wanting to do it ourselves. So I wanted to do a video about ribs that's pretty easy to do in terms of the prep, in terms of the cook, and all that kind of stuff, and just to make it a little bit more manageable. So if you're looking to do something that's fast, quick, and delicious, this is the video. The cooking that we're gonna be doing today is inspired by a place called Rendezvous. It's a pretty famous barbecue place. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of it. And they kind of specialize in what they're known for are the dry rub ribs. Now, even though there's a bunch of places that do dry rub ribs, I wanted to specifically copy this recipe, or at least try to do my own version of it. As I've watched these videos, they are doing certain things that are just different than other places, and that it kind of lended to the idea of like ribs that I wanted to try to create. A lot of times we think of ribs as being really sticky and sweet, but these ribs are much different. The cooker that they use there is different as well. They don't really have a rotisserie or an offset. They kind of basically have almost like a cabinet smoker, but they operate more like a grill because they cook on it a lot hotter. They don't use wood, they don't use any gas or anything like that. It's all just charcoal at the bottom. The other thing that they don't do is they don't season their ribs until the very end. Now I'll talk a little bit about that during the cooking part of this video, but it's another thing that I thought was really interesting, but I understood why they don't, or like why they add certain flavors at different parts of the cook as well. I think it's just really cool that there is this different style of cooking that not a lot of people do, and as famous as this place is, there still aren't that many places that do it like this. I just wanted to do something that was different, something that was fun, and it just kind of allows you to cook barbecue in a different way so that you're not always doing the same 6-hour ribs on the spare ribs, or the same techniques as just like cooking them, wrapping them in foil with a little bit of sauce. Like, it can get kind of boring. With this recipe, I just wanted to follow a couple of rules. One was to just make a recipe that's really easy. Two, that was fast, so that we don't have to spend so much time outside, feeding a fire and using a bunch of stuff to kind of finish like a rack of ribs. And three, I just want to do something that was different. So with that being said, we're gonna get into these 1.5 hour dry rub baby back ribs. So obviously I don't have the same type of smoker that they have at Rendezvous, which is kind of like a brick vertical smoker where they just put the coals underneath, and so and I also don't have a chud box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to recreate that with just my grill here, especially since I got my firebox going. I'm just going to use those coals from there to just kind of place underneath. Now, because obviously there's no way for me to slip the coals underneath the meat because we got the grates on top, what we're going to do is we're just going to remove one of the grates just so that I can put coals on one end, and that when this is kind of the same thing that I do with steaks I told you guys about. Like if I'm worrying about one side getting too hot and I just want to quickly get it off, you can just kind of like you can just use your tongs or whatever, and you can just like slide the grates around like that. So if I'm not cooking a bunch, if I'm only using one grate, that's what I typically do, just to make it a little bit easier for me to kind of manage the fire. Just gonna play around with it, and it's just kind of another way to playing around with different cooking styles, getting different textures, different levels of smoke. It's not like burning wood with a lot of air. There's almost no airflow in this thing, and it's a lot of that coal that doesn't really have that much life anymore. Like I said, we're not looking for flames going on here. There might be some flare-ups, as the maybe later on the cook, as more fat starts to render. I'm just really interested to see what the texture will be, the level of smokiness that we'll get on these ribs just from doing this method alone. So yeah, let's give it a shot. So again, these are the type of coals that we're looking for. No flame, but they're still fairly hot. And then we'll just get a couple of shovelfuls. All right, so it is pretty hot. I mean we're like grilling here, and the one thing that I was watching a video of Rendezvous, and one of their head chefs was basically saying like, uh, you know, they can get these ribs done in like 45 minutes if they really needed to, and to an hour and a half, and it's in terms of temp wise, he was saying it's like roughly about 350 degrees. So obviously we're not used to doing that type of heat. It is fairly hot right now. I only put two shovelfuls in there, but it's borderline like grilling right now. So we're gonna let these sit for a little bit. Yeah, we'll just kind of like we'll keep the stack on this thing. I mean, I guess you can call this a stack open, just so we can get a little bit of airflow. We're just gonna do this by feel, because there's no way for me to really. I'm not gonna put a thermometer in, on the grate just to get a good feel for it. We're just gonna go by feel and just make sure we're not, grilling this at a temperature like you would a steak. But we are gonna keep it fairly hot. All right, so real quick, just to prep these baby backs, from this kind of Memphis style that I saw Rendezvous doing, is they just do it without any seasoning, and they put a dry rub on top of it. I did this before and tried to do the same thing, and I found that it tended to be a little bit under seasoned, even with a dry rub at the end. So what I'm doing for this time is I'm going to season ahead of time. The other rub that we made in the other video, that kind of more savory, I guess that Cajun-ish dry rub, is what I'm going to put on top of it. And I think it'll just help it build a better crust with a little salt. So we're going to do that right now. Put a little bit of salt on top. And now I'll be honest with you guys, with this one, I am not going to take the membrane off of it, but there is one thing that does tend to happen. And, keeping the membrane on is going to be a little bit tricky, because we got heat directly on there. If it gets too hot and the fat starts dripping and starts to get a little bit too, the fire becomes more grilling, this will tend to get a little bit papery. So I'm going to try not to happen, but also if it does, has this kind of like flap right here, maybe I can just kind of rip it off at the very end. But we'll just play around with it. Again, I'm gonna try my best not to get it super crispy, and I'm gonna try to do most of the cooking on the meat side, because that's how they usually do it anyway. I'm gonna toss this on the grill over there and just see what we get. There's a little bit of sizzling. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but yeah, we're definitely gonna have to keep an eye on this. But I'm really looking forward to this. It shouldn't take very long. The other thing that I'm gonna be worried about too is there's not, right now as I'm seeing it, there's not much coal on this end right here. Really just mostly this part, which might not be a bad thing because this is a smaller end, so it might not be a bad place for it. But later on, second shovelful of coals, maybe I'll spread it more evenly next time if this corner seems to be a little more behind. We're gonna let this go for, I don't know, 15-20 minutes. I just want to see what it looks like from there. All right, so we're about 30 minutes into this cook, and I don't know if you can tell, but it's starting to, you can hear it starting to cook a little bit now. Some of the juice is starting to run. That salt is starting to create something and starting to dissolve a little bit. Some pretty good color right there, guys. We'll add some more coals, and I want to make sure that we get an even amount of coals in the top and bottom this time. Yeah, we'll see where we go from there. Okay, so we're about an hour in or so. This is what it looks like. It's pretty good. I haven't flipped it yet. Maybe it needs a little more time. I'm not sure yet. Looking pretty good. Definitely the salt on here is definitely helping build a little bit more texture, which I like a lot. So I would definitely recommend salting it as you go. I know at Rendezvous they say that they also baste it with vinegar and a mix of vinegar and pickle juice. I don't think it's necessary, so I'm not going to do it. But I will make sure that before I apply that dry rub onto it at the very end, I will put a little bit of warmed apple cider vinegar with maybe a little bit of pepper flakes on there, just to get a little spice on there, because I don't have the pepper flakes inside my rub, but I do like that addition. So I think what I'll do is, at this point, it's been just short of an hour, so I'm gonna flip it and cook it on that bottom side and get more coals in here also. So the other thing that I'm going to be looking for this one again is to make sure that the membrane doesn't get too charred, because I don't want that membrane to get too leathery. So I'm gonna be paying more attention, probably checking it more often than I did when I was just meat side down. But I really do like that texture. It is like, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's kind of crunchy. So I like that texture a lot. Check on it in 20 minutes just to make sure. Alright guys, so I just flipped this one and you can see this skin right there. It's already cracking right there. You can hear that. And so I definitely wanted to flip it just to make sure that it wasn't going to get too crusty and too leathery. I mean, I think we can still peel this off, but yeah. Doesn't taste bad though. Tastes like a pork chip. A couple more minutes on that meat side, but they're almost ready to go though. So the meat is tightened up. I don't want it to get super grainy. I still want it to stay juicy and have some texture. So we'll probably give another, I don't know, we'll say 10-15 minutes or so. But total cook time right now has been roughly about, I want to say, an hour and 15. So not bad for my first slab of ribs. Alright, so this is just the finished rib with, remember, just salt. And you guys take a look at that color, man. That color is great. You know, I was talking about before on the baby backs, this little middle section tends to get too dry and slips right off. But in this one, it might be like that. It's a little bit, it's definitely crunchier, but it shouldn't fall off. It should add a nice texture component. It's still pretty soft underneath. Like I said, on the back end, it did start to pop and peel just a little bit right there. So, you know, we could probably just peel this right off, which is probably what I'll do. But since we just pulled this off, I'm going to let this rest for, I don't know, about 5-10 minutes or so. So again, we'll baste it with some of this apple cider vinegar. I put a little bit of red pepper flake on there. Again, we're just kind of getting it moist, just so that once that seasoning hits the rib, that it's going to melt a little bit. This rub has a lot of has oregano, thyme, a lot of paprika, a little bit of cayenne, and a little more savory spice. Remember, so there's no sugar in this one. Yeah, let's just kind of, oh, actually, on the back end, I forgot we said we were going to take off that membrane, and also make sure that when we cut individual ribs, that we won't have, you know, all this kind of like skin that's kind of just you know, sticking off on the sides. So on the back side, we'll put a little light dusting of it. We'll go a little bit heavier on that top side. All right. So this is my I guess Memphis dry rub rib inspired by Rendezvous. So this is a rib that my dad actually really likes. He likes that there's not sugar in it. He likes that it's a little bit savory, and the texture is just a little bit different as well. So see that rib? It doesn't have that same, you're not going to get that same smoke ring that you would from you know, an offset. But let's give this a taste. We're still getting a really good clean bite out of it. Okay guys, this rib is actually really, really good. I actually like this a lot better than the first time I made it. I think that salt initially, again, it just helps to make sure everything's nicely seasoned. In terms of cooking time, again, it was about an hour 15 or so. And last time I think I overdid it because I went an hour 40 or so, and the meat was a little bit more grainy and it wasn't as juicy. This one like tastes like a pork chop almost, and that's the one thing that I do like about, you know, about the baby backs, is it does have that, it's coming around the same area where you're getting this type of texture of meat, where it's a little bit leaner but it's packed with flavor as long as you cook it right. Definitely would recommend this. This is, I'm actually very shocked about how different it was from last time, and I think, you know, adding the salt beforehand, making sure it's getting good caramelized color without getting too dark, especially on that back end. The texture that I had last time was really leathery and a little unpleasant, but this rib is really great. So anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think if you guys try it out. Obviously with this rub, very, very simple, right? This is the one that we did last time. the oregano and thyme really punches through. But you know, you could probably add things like mustard powder in here. I think coriander would be really nice in here as well. And so, you know, play around with it. Again, this is just a base for you guys to build on top of and show me up and make a better rub. Again, if you guys like this video, make sure you like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and I'll see you guys in the next one. It's good, guys. Woo!